Hi, I'm Artemis,
And I'm Hannah.
and welcome to Makeshift Podcast. So, this is our podcast where we talk about all things reality shifting. We've been wanting to make this podcast for a while now.
Yep, we
And
definitely have, and I'm really excited that we finally get to do it.
yay! Me too. So, let's jump right in with what is reality shifting.
Yeah, let's do
Um,
it.
we've sort of come up with our own definition because the thing is, we can't actually really fully define what reality shifting is because we don't know.
Exactly.
So we've just sort of come up with a definition based on our best guesses, like what
Our best knowledge, the way that we understand it, and the way that it makes the most sense to us.
yeah. So reality shifting is the ability to consciously switch your awareness from one reality to another. Some people believe that we exist in a multiverse of infinite realities, and when we shift, we're moving our awareness from one reality to another reality. And then some people believe that we're creating the reality we experience with our own minds. And we believe that it's more like a combination of the
Yep.
two. Whatever the explanation, it feels like a real other life where time passes normally and everything you experience with your five senses feels as real as it does here. That's
Yep.
the important part, that it feels like a fully real experience. So you can spend months in another reality and it will feel like you've actually spent months, even if you wake up and it's been 3 minutes.
Yep. We will experience time passing. We will have all of our five senses. You will
Yeah.
have It's going to feel just as real as it is here. So, regardless of if it's a physical multiverse, a consciousness, or the way that we believe it, which is both, which we'll get into later, it's going to feel just as real as you being in this reality. And that's what's most important.
Yeah.
And that's what distinguishes reality shifting from other things.
Yeah. I think the main difference between the two theories is that, like, one theory postulates that you're going outside, you're moving your awareness outside of yourself to get to these other realities, and the other one basically postulates that you're moving your awareness further into yourself to experience these other realities. And my view is that those aren't mutually exclusive, that it's
Exactly.
it's kind of both at the same time. When I meditate, I often do this thing where I'll imagine like a bright light like emanating out from myself, and it'll go like outside the room and then outside the town and then outside the state and the country, and it'll get bigger and bigger until I'm like out in the solar system and then out past the known universe. But whenever I imagine this meditation, once I get as far out as it's possible to go, I always imagine that somehow it ends up right back inside of me.
Yeah.
And so that it's circular, it's cyclical, that the energy doesn't actually, that expanding or going internally, they can happen at the same time.
Yeah.
So anyway, got a little sidetracked there. But yeah, so reality shifting is, we don't fully know exactly. We know people are having these experiences. What we haven't been able to do yet is understand scientifically how it's happening or why it's happening or what exactly is happening when we experience these things. What we do know for sure is that these are real experiences. And
Yeah.
that's the important part, that people are actually having these experiences. And they're not lucid dreaming, although there may be some
Some kind of,
connection.
or
It may
some kind of
be,
relation between them, but
they
they're
may
not
be
this.
they may be related, maybe similar parts of the brain are active when doing one or the other. We're not sure. There may also be similar connections with astral projection, but again, we're not sure. There aren't studies done, so there may be some connection, there may be absolutely no connection. We don't know at the current time. What we do know is that reality shifting is not psychosis,
Nope.
dissociation,
Nope.
maladaptive daydreaming,
Definitely not.
hallucinating,
Definitely not.
schizophrenia,
Nope.
or any number of other unhealthy things like that. And both of us have talked extensively with licensed mental health professionals to
Yep.
confirm that reality shifting is not any of those things.
And not only that, but was told that it was actually really healthy and really good for what we were doing for it, the way that we're approaching our shifting journeys. Like
Yeah.
my therapist was thrilled. And she's like, "Oh, well, that makes sense. Here's some advice. By the way, have you tried this yet?" And I was like, "Thanks. No, I hadn't
I love that.
actually."
I
Yeah.
love that. And that isn't to say that reality shifting can't be done in an unhealthy way,
It definitely can.
just like basically
Anything.
anything. Like reading can become unhealthy if you're using it as a form of unhealthy escapism. So like there aren't it's not that there aren't any issues that could arise, it's that but reality shifting itself is not any of those issues. It might
Yes.
exacerbate issues that exist, but so could anything else.
Anything. Yeah.
Anything else. And so that's less about the thing itself and more
And
about
more about you.
you knowing yourself and knowing what is likely to set you on a path you don't want to be on.
Yep.
Um,
The whole point of reality shifting is that it's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be exciting, and it's supposed to be a new experience. And if it is not those things, that's when you should be taking breaks and kind of stepping back from it, because shifting should be something you're excited about. And if it's something that is no longer, being something positive in your life, take a step back and take a break.
right,
Never hurts. Shifting's not ever going anywhere. You can always take a break. I
right.
say as somebody who hates taking breaks and being told that. So,
Yeah. I also just wanted to add that like in addition to like having mental health professionals like confirm that reality shifting is not,
a
you know,
mental health issue.
maladaptive daydreaming, dissociation, etc. I also want to add that I've personally experienced like maladaptive daydreaming, and it's not the same thing at
Yep,
all. Like
same.
I think the misconception and where people trip up when they're trying to say, oh, reality shifting is all these mental health conditions. What they don't understand is that people who have these issues, who struggle with these things, generally know what it feels like when they're experiencing those things.
Yep,
And so if reality shifting was any of those things, like we would know. We
yep.
would know that
I
that's what we're experiencing. Generally, people who hallucinate know what hallucinations feel like. As someone who has struggled with maladaptive daydreaming, although not generally since like high school, but I know what that feels like, right?
yeah.
I can identify that.
Same
Um,
thing with like dissociation. I
yeah,
had and have dissociation, and like it's not the same thing at all. Maladaptive daydreaming, it's not the same thing. It's also not anything close to lucid dreaming. In the three shifts I've had, they were very distinctively different than any kind of other dream experience I've ever had. So I know it's not lucid dreaming either.
yeah. So that's our very strong what shifting isn't. And I feel like that's sort of
Yes.
like our disclaimer for like, no, this it's a real thing and it's not an unhealthy thing.
Yep.
We just
Hence,
don't fully understand exactly what
and
it is.
and that's okay. That's why we
And
have
that's
this
fine.
podcast. That's
Yeah.
what we're here to talk about. Here to talk about our theories, our opinions, our experiences, and to talk about things that aren't like, that we're kind of just jumping in there.
People use reality shifting to explore different timelines, different lifestyles, to rewire trauma, to visit fictional worlds, to try out different career paths,
Yep.
to
Learn new skills.
learn new skills. Absolutely. I'm excited to use it to have like a quiet space to retreat to when
Yeah.
I'm feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated in this reality, that like I can just have a space where I can just like go and basically introvert for a little
Yep.
while without any responsibilities and just like take time to recuperate and then come back refreshed.
Yep.
That's the thing I'm most excited for, honestly.
I know a lot of people have therapy DRs. I have a therapy part of
Yeah.
my waiting room, so that way, in case anything like super traumatic happens, I have it scripted that I'll go straight from whenever I shift there, I'll go to my therapy part of my DR first to get therapy for whatever trauma I experienced. So that way I'm all like that. And same thing here. That means if I go to sleep here and something really traumatic happened, I'd wake up in my waiting room, theoretically,
Yeah, and
and
that's the other
get
thing,
therapy.
right? Is shifting, like, just to reiterate how real it is. It's so real that you can bring back trauma from
Yes,
another reality. And all you can also
very much so.
and you can also rewire trauma in another reality. Like that's how real
Very,
it is.
very much. That's what my main DR is for. The one my Once Upon a Time DR, the one that's literally probably in the midst of us filming this first season is gonna I'm gonna have my first shift there, like for more than 3 seconds.
Yes.
But that whole DR is centered around getting a form of healing that I literally could never do here because it requires somebody else being not toxic, and that just can't happen here. So, and I'm really excited about that because like it really like I already like even just in like with the memories I've gotten and like what few experiences and like getting the experiences for that 3 second grounded shift I had, like I already feel like the like some form of relief already. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited for everything that's going to happen in that reality.
Yay.
I'm excited for a healthy family. I also want to throw in that, like, I personally also believe that shifting gives you a deeper understanding of the nature of consciousness and how we interact with the world. So not
Mm.
only does it help with obviously getting to another reality, but in this reality too, like shifting has helped me so much. And I really genuinely believe that it's because I started paying attention to like those types of things. Like shifting in general has just changed my life, but that's a whole other just topic of discussion.
I love
So
that for you. I love that. For
my
me
shifting journey's
personally,
been so positive.
that's
As
amazing.
frustrating as it's been.
For me personally, it's helped me with my insomnia because
Same. Oh my gosh.
yeah, because like shifting methods really help me fall asleep.
Yep.
So if anything else I've gained,
Shifting methods help you sleep. They also help me sleep. I have found I suffered from so much, like I was on medication and then I stopped on medication and was just raw dogging insomnia for a while. And then I found shifting and all of a sudden, like I just do not suffer from insomnia anymore. I've only had like one insomniatic night in the last 6 months that I can remember, and it was because I was so excited about the fact that like I was probably gonna I'm gonna shift soon, and I know it's gonna happen, and my brain was like, it's literally any day now. How exciting is that? And then I just could not go to sleep because I was just too excited.
ah,
I know.
this is probably a good place to define terms like DR since we're
Yes,
using them. So
we
there's like
definitely should.
a lot of terms. And by the way, reality shifting isn't actually new. It's gained a lot in popularity since the pandemic started, mostly through TikTok. But the concept, the experience that people describe experiencing, there are reports of these same kinds of experiences going back hundreds, if not thousands of years in various parts of the world. I read a story about a coma patient who was in a coma and basically in that coma lived like an entire lifetime. And when they woke up, they had trouble adjusting because they had genuinely felt like they had lived like 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize that anything was off until they woke up. So there are reports of these kinds of experiences, and people who like reach really deep meditative states and also have these types of experiences. So defining terms. So
Yes.
DR usually stands for either
Desired
desired
reality,
reality or I like destined reality.
destined.
Another term is IR or intended reality. All three of those basically mean the same thing, and it's the reality that you are
Trying
in-
to become aware of.
intending to shift your awareness
Intending.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Use
Um,
proper language,
I
Hannah.
think I think originally people just used the term desired reality, and then I think we people started switching it because desired made it sound like it was out of reach.
Yep.
And
And
so intended reality or destined reality makes it seem more like um attainable.
Yep, I went through that crisis back in like January or February of this year, 2023, and it was only in the
I
last couple
remember
of
that.
yeah, it was only in the last couple of months that I just started calling it a DR just to shorten it to a different reality. So I'm like, I've got my MCU DR. So when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, MCU DR. And then I've got my Loki intended realities. That's my IR. And then this once upon a time, well, that's my Storybrooke DR. So DR is now in my brain just associated with my reality in general, and I've removed what it actually stands for entirely.
Mm,
And it's just an abbreviation for my
yeah.
the reality I'm trying to go to, so that ADHD brain doesn't get bored thinking of the word Storybrooke, because apparently laying down to meditate, sometimes that word is too long to think about. So I just be like, my DR, and my brain's like Storybrooke, and I'm like, yes, that
That's so
that one.
legit though. My brain does the same thing. I'm like, that's too long. That's too
Yeah.
much. I'll have like
So
whole sequences of like affirmations and then I'll be like, those are too long.
yep, that's what I do. So that's
Shorten
why I
them.
started just being like, well, I'm not going to work against it. I'm just going to find a way to work for it. So then I was like, well, DR doesn't really stand for anything other than the reality you're trying to get to. So I'm just going to call it a DR, and then my brain will automatically know what I'm talking about. My brain was like, yeah, that makes sense. We got
Yeah.
it. And I was like, okay, great. I'm glad this took a year and a half to get, but that's cool.
Yeah. So then CR stands for current reality.
Yeah.
OR stands for original reality. People
Yep.
usually use those terms to refer to this reality. So your CR or your OR would be the reality that you're in, which is usually synonymous with the reality you started out in. And then DR or IR is the reality that you're trying to go to, and there can
Yep.
be multiple of those. I personally use CR, current reality, a little bit differently. I use it to refer to whatever reality I am
Yep.
in at the moment. So if I shifted my awareness to, let's say one of mine is charmed, so let's say I'm in my charmed reality, when I'm trying to shift there, that would be my DR. But when I'm there, that would be my CR.
Yep.
I don't think I've heard a lot of other people use the term that way. I think most people just
Yep.
use it to refer to this specific reality. But I use original reality for this specific reality and current reality for whatever reality I'm in. Because to me, that makes it seem like like there's no hierarchy of
Yeah.
reality, if that makes
Agreed.
sense.
No,
Um,
I 100% agree, because that's how I am. Like if I had shifted and I was now in Storybrooke, for instance, because Once Upon a Time is my main DR, I would think of that reality now as my CR, and this reality would be my Colorado reality. So my Colorado OR is probably what I would think
yeah.
of it as.
I've
Um,
named this the Age of Aquarius reality.
it's just so beautiful. Way better than mine. I find really lame names. My all of my DRs are named really just boring. Nothing creative about it.
Well, most of them are like, like my Once Upon a Time reality, my Hogwarts reality, whatever. But then
The
this one, I
queries.
tried to think of like what would this reality, like what would the story of this world be if this was a story? And that's what made me try to come up with a name for it. And I was like, well, what's like the main thing that's happening right now? And it's like, well, where? There's
Yeah.
like there's so much happening all over the place. So I was like, if there's one big thing that's happening, I think that regardless of whether you're spiritual or not, I do think that we're going through like a huge culture shift sort of across the board.
Yep.
Um, and to me, that feels like shifting into the age of Aquarius. So I call it the age of Aquarius reality.
Nope, I agree, and I love it. Another one that we mentioned earlier is a waiting room, which is WR. WR stands for waiting room.
Room,
Yeah.
which is oftentimes people will use a waiting room as a place to shift to on their way to a desired reality,
Or back
um,
from.
or back from. Oftentimes, people, this is not true for everyone, but for some people, it's easier to shift to a waiting room. A waiting room might be, for example, exactly like your current bedroom, except that like the doorway out leads to your desired reality. And it might
Mhm.
just be easier to shift there because you have an easier time imagining it because you're already in that, the room you're in already looks like that. For some people, it might be like a dream bedroom. For some people, it might be like in the middle of a forest, just wherever is easiest for them to shift to. I think of waiting rooms as sort of like pocket dimensions rather than being
Same.
an entire other reality. It's like sort of almost like a mini reality.
Yep.
Um, and you can also have waiting rooms that are like someone like a therapy DR, I think might be more like a waiting room where it's like a little pocket reality that's just for that.
We have a whole episode we're going to devote just to talking about the waiting rooms
Yeah.
and our ideas about those.
And
So
all
we
the
can go
things you can do
yes,
with
and
them.
all of the things because my waiting room is not even just one room. It's a whole mansion with just a bunch of different like it can get very you can do a lot of things with your waiting room. So I'm actually really excited to talk about that in a future episode because it's gonna be
Yeah.
really fun.
And this also sort of connects to this next term, which I'm pretty sure I came up with because I haven't heard anybody else use it, but it's BR, which stands for base reality.
That's
And
right.
my base reality is basically like an expanded waiting room. That's I call it my waiting room of requirement because it's kind of like the room of requirement from Harry Potter, but it's like a whole it's a little bigger than a waiting room normally is because it's like there's a whole house and then there might even be like a little town and surrounding nature areas.
Yeah.
And it like connects to like I know like it connects to your waiting rooms so we can
Yep.
like go visit each other. That's also a
Yes.
whole
That,
other
and that's
topic we'll
that's why we
talk
have a
about.
whole episode
But
devoted just to that because
yeah,
they
so to me a base reality means the reality like if you have a reality that is sort of like your anchor reality or the reality that you kind of always return to, and I think for most people it's this reality, like the reality that you started out in would be your base reality because I think it's easiest for that to be an anchor
yep.
reality because you're already anchored here. For me personally, just because of my brain, I think it will be easier for me once I've shifted there. I have not actually shifted to this reality yet. At least I don't think. Um that's another topic. I might have accidentally mini shifted there, but that's another topic. But this like sort of like waiting room reality will become my base reality because just for my brain, I need my base reality to be like sort of like an isolated safe space for
Yep.
me. Which does not necessarily mean that I will spend more time there than this reality or any other reality. It just means that like that will be my return to retreat to space for, and I always pass through it on my way between any realities. So always before I come back here or always before I go to any other reality, essentially. And then it will also give me like, you know, like in TV shows, they'll be like previously on.
Yeah.
They'll basically like do that for whatever reality I'm going to, so that like if I've accidentally spent like 4 months or something in another reality and then I'm coming back and I'll be like, wait, what happened in this reality before I left it? It'll be like, here's what happened, and here are like all the key points of what happened in this reality before you left it,
Yeah.
so that you can better adjust going back into that. Because that's the thing people talk about is they'll spend months in another reality and then they'll come back and they'll be so disoriented because it'll feel like 4 months have passed and they won't remember what they did yesterday now in this
Yep.
reality. So that's my strategy. Mini shift, that's another term
Oh
we should
yes.
define. And this is a hard one because I think it also means different things to different people as
It
well.
definitely does, but we're just gonna go for it. And this is our definition of mini shifts. This is what, like, when we refer to a mini shift,
Well,
this
I
is
think
what
we have
we're.
two different definitions too, so we
No,
might
they kind of become because I believe what you believe. I just have a little. I just add on little extra things to mine because I have to put all of them into one little term, or my brain starts getting upset at me.
all right. Well, why don't you go first then?
Okay, so I think that a mini shift is a experience that you have where you were trying to shift and you either get one of your five senses or a couple of different senses. So you may hear something and think, "Oh, I heard somebody in my DR," or I opened my eyes and I saw something for a second, or I felt like the train seat beneath me, or like, those types of things. You may get a smell from your DR. I've in one of my mini shifts woken up and smelled coffee and then opened my eyes and it was middle of the night and everybody was asleep and there's no way I could have been smelling coffee. So like I classify those types of things as mini shifts, but also just if you have an experience and you're not sure if you shift, like if it really was a shifting experience or not, and you really can't tell, and there's really not a way that you can tell, you're going to call it a mini shift, because if nothing else, it gives you the motivation, and you may as well claim it, and it's not going to hurt
Yeah.
anybody if you do. So I combine both of mine, because like a lot of mine, I feel like I second guess myself. So I may think I hear something, and then I'm like, well, what if there's some logical explanation for the
Yeah.
reason I heard Killian Jones's voice scream my name and startle me awake? There's totally a logical explanation for that. I'm definitely so sure. It's fine.
Yeah. That second one is how I use it. If I'm not 100% sure if I've shifted, or if I'm like, maybe it was just a really hyper realistic lucid dream, because I do have those. My lucid dreams are very realistic. I generally have all five of my senses in lucid dreams.
Yeah.
So like hyper realistic. So if I'm like not sure if I shifted or lucid dreamt, then I'll usually call it a mini shift, because that makes me feel like I can claim it, which gives me more motivation.
Yep.
For when it's just a few of the senses, I'll often call it a partial shift. I know I've
Ah,
heard that term thrown around too. Some people also use the term mini shift to refer to like a shorter shift, like if they fully
yeah,
shift
a
for
couple
a
seconds or
few
something.
seconds or a few minutes. To me, that's just a shift. Like
Yeah,
maybe
I
it's
agree.
shorter, but if you're fully there and you're 100% sure you're there, and you know, like this is real, time is passing normally, this is not a dream, lucid or otherwise, this is real. That's just a full shift, no matter how short it is.
Yep. If there's no doubt in my mind that it was a shift, that's what I call a shift. And if there is a doubt in my mind that maybe the thing that I experienced may have not been what that was, like I can't be sure, that's what I call a mini shift. So it's like the one
Yeah.
shift I've had to my Once Upon a Time DR was for 3 seconds, but it was the first fully grounded shift I had. Ironically, the shortest of the three shifts I've had, but that's a whole different whatever. But like I was fully there, grounded, felt my whole body had reached out and like felt different areas of my bed. I could feel like from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. Like I did a full body check, and I've never done that before. And which was just like kind of like really surreal. And I started getting hit with like memories and experiences from the past several weeks, and like just like DR thoughts. And I was just like very bamboozled. And then I got hit with a bodily urge that terrified me. So I shifted back. That's how it is. If I had just opened my eyes and gotten up and walked to the bathroom, everything would have been fine. But I panicked instead. And that's what I've had to deal with for the last several months is just,
So that's a great segue into our next thing, which is our shifting status. So you've
yes,
fully shifted.
I fully shifted 3 times. I had my very first shift 8 months into my shifting journey. So June of 2021. Or 2022, sorry, 2022. I found out about shifting in like
Wow.
August.
But that was before I knew about shifting.
Yeah, I had my very first shift last June, and it was for 3 full hours. But the problem was is that
Whoa.
I didn't realize I had shifted. I just kind of got there, registered that things were different, but then I was in that reality, and I've always been in that reality. And I was like, no, it's literally looked like this when you went to sleep last night. What are you talking about? But I was noticing like that's different. This is different. Your dog sounds different. The apartment's different. Like I made coffee, and I'd never made coffee in a coffee pot before. And I just like I logged into my computer, but like I wasn't, it was just a really weird experience. I was in my same apartment, but it was much more upgraded. I was getting ready for a business trip that I was going on in 2 days that my job was paying for me to go to like Florida or Texas. I really couldn't remember. I just knew that I was really upset about wherever I was going. I didn't want to go there. And I just put on a conference call and was just like watching the news on a different screen during a conference call for whatever job I had at the time because I wasn't paying attention. I was just going through, just like autopiloting basically. And it was watching the news and them saying that gas prices were going to be 561 projected before the end of June. And I was like, maybe I should get Walmart Plus. Maybe it's worth it. And then I thought, wait a second, gas is nowhere near that much. Are we in a different What's happening right now? Wait a second. How much time has passed? You have no idea what your time ratio is. What's going on right now back where in your other reality? And I came back and just like woke up and was like, that was the weirdest dream I've ever had in my whole life because I didn't think it was a shift, even though I was fully there in like 3 hours, like 3 whole hours
And
had
time was passing.
100%
Yeah.
passing. It was just that I was on autopilot and I was noticing things, but I wasn't, it was just like if I had woken up yesterday, like I don't remember typing in my password at work yesterday, but I know I did it. Like it just like that's what it felt like when I shifted back here. It just was like the memory of being there for a while, coming back. 3 hours had passed. I drank coffee. I had breakfast. I'd walked my dogs. One of my dogs sounded
That's
completely
wild.
different. So that was my very first shift ever, and it always has made me really mad because at the time I didn't realize that like I had shifted, so I didn't ground myself. And because I hadn't grounded myself, it all kind of was just a smidge hazy because like time passed. I had all my senses and everything, but because I wasn't grounded there, it was more like I was kind of like just along for the ride, just kind of like watching myself go through all of the like do all of these things, but I wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily the one making the decisions to do them. It was just a really weird
Like
experience.
you
My
were
sec
like piggybacking on the version of you that existed in that reality rather
yes,
than like being fully integrated in the version of you
100
that
yeah.
existed in that reality.
And my only explanation for that was that I wasn't grounded. Like if I had like thought to ground myself and be like, "Oh, I'm in another reality now. Like put your hands under the sink and feel the water," because I'm not going to think to pay attention to my senses and like you tell me right now, what are you feeling? I'd be like, I don't know. What are you talking about? I don't know what I'm feeling. Hold on. Like that's just kind of how I go through life and that's how that reality was too. So I was just kind of piggybacking on her and just like chilling, confused, just going about life because I had just been there that whole time. I was younger. I was a couple years younger than I was at that time. I think I was like 24 or 25, and at the time I was had just turned 28. So that was also a little bit weird. I knew that my age was different. But yeah, it was just a much nicer version of this reality. Like my ghetto apartment was upgraded and really pretty. I had like rainbow flower pots outside my window. I had this private dog run so I could just let my dogs out my window instead of having to walk them outside because I'm lazy, which apparently is just something that's going to go through every. So I'm going to find the easiest, least busy way of doing something to make my life easier, apparently. But yeah, so that was my first shift. I then had my second shift. So that was my first shift was in June. I didn't have another shift until April of the following year. Um, and that one was again where I shifted, but I didn't ground myself because I didn't think about it because I just became aware of myself in the middle of walking through a hallway after getting done like brushing my teeth and doing a nighttime routine, processed, like paused in the hallway and was like, didn't I already do this? I thought I did this already. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I go to my room and like things are in slightly different areas, or there's something that like a dog bed wasn't where it was supposed to be. So I had to go somewhere else to do something. And then like I plugged my phone in and I scrolled TikTok for a bit and I like set my alarms and I like shut down my house and like got everything ready for bed and then just went to bed and like turned over and then woke back up here and was like, well, okay. Okay. That's cool. Just shifted to have a bedtime routine twice. It's fine. It totally was reasonable. And then 2 months later, I shifted to my Once Upon a Time reality. And that was the first grounded shift I've ever had. So the first two were kind of hazy, where it was kind of like I was there and I was conscious that things were different, but I didn't really process it, so I didn't think to fully ground myself there. But my Once Upon a Time reality, I shifted on accident without meaning to, and was very confused because I had literally gotten cold, snuggled up to my husband, thrown my legs over like over his whole body, and as in the process of doing that, I think I had this thought, wow, it'd be so cool to shift right now, or like I'd really like to be in my DR, and all of a sudden, like I was no, I like. My legs had been in the process of moving and I was just like laying turned over on the side and I was like, what's happening right now? And like my eyes were closed. I was still like partially asleep. And I started like reaching out on the bed, like looking for my husband. Cause I was like, I just threw my legs over him. He was just there. I just cuddled up to him because I was cold. And I was like, he's not here. The temperature of the room is different. Like I'm not, it's no longer cold. The bed is different. Like the sheets feel different. Like I'm feeling around, like my pillows felt different. And I was like, okay, what's happening right now? So I just kind of like did a full body check and like could feel myself in a different position than I had been originally and was like, okay, this is all really weird. It wasn't until like I got all the way down to my toes and was like, I can feel my toes, like I wiggled my toes in a whole other reality on purpose. And then it hit me that I had to pee really, really bad. And it made me panic. So then I immediately shifted back and was so mad because like I was getting like memories and experiences the last several days. Like I like got the memory of like actually like talking to Graham at Granny's and like noticing what booth he always sits at and like just like little random things that like I would think of as I'm waking up. I was having those thoughts, and I don't know, it was just a really weird experience. And now here we are, and we've had a couple mini shifts. I have so many mini shifts, but 3 full shifts. One
Yeah.
grounded for 3 seconds.
And then I've had one, maybe two mini shifts, maybe a few. I would have to like go back and look at my journals. But the one that sticks out to me is I woke up and I was lying on sand.
I remember you telling me about this.
And I like to the point where I was like, I'm lying on sand and like it feels warm and I feel sun on me and this feels weird. And then I like picked it up in my hand because I was so like, what is going on? And I like could feel sand in my hand. And then I like did this with it and like felt it felt like real sand. And I was like, did I just shift? And then I sat up and I was in my bed.
Yep.
And so I'm still not 100% convinced that it wasn't just a really vivid lucid dream because I do have very vivid lucid dreams where things feel pretty tangible. They don't feel quite as real as they do here, but they do feel tangible enough that when it's happening, it feels real, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. But again, the biggest difference is that it feels real when it's happening, but when I wake up, I'm like, oh, it didn't actually feel as real as I thought it did, which is
Yeah.
different from shifting, which when you look back on it feels like an act like it you remember it feeling as real as if it was this real.
Yeah, no, like that's how real it was. I've never experienced anything that real in a dream. And I've
Yeah.
had realistic like lucid dreams. I've had
Yeah.
like dreams or lucid dreams where it feels like days or weeks have gone by, but when I come back, it doesn't actually feel like that much time has passed. I
Yeah.
just in the dream at the time, I knew that's how much time was passing,
Yeah, it's
but it
like when
didn't
you're
actually,
lucid dreaming, when you're dreaming, your brain will sort of like fill in the gaps and
yeah,
be just like time has passed, but you don't actually feel the time passing.
exactly.
But when you've shifted realities, you actually feel the time passing. Like in a dream, you don't experience every single moment, right?
Exactly.
Where it's like it's almost like a movie, right? Where it's like here's the key point and then here's another key point and things don't always make sense, right? But in a shift, it's it's just like reality. You will be like
100%.
right like you'll be like sitting there picking your toenails, right, or whatever, like, and like time will actually pass exactly like it does here and
Yep.
you'll do like mundane things.
Very mundane things. Like I said, I literally had to like type in my password into my computers to put on a conference call that even in that reality I knew was useless and I didn't even need to be there for. And I was folding laundry in a whole different room for like 28 minutes, just sitting there folding like 3 different baskets of laundry because the call would never end. And I was just annoyed by it. And I was just sitting there like, I should be planning on buying my ticket because or like planning like I was thinking about buying something for the work trip I had. And I was like, I don't go on work trips. Like if I think back on it, like I was having all these weird thoughts and like there were like a lot of things happening, but it's been so long that like I only remember the highlights. But like, yeah, there was a time where like for a part of one of my conference calls, I literally sat in a room and folded laundry for like 20 minutes because I was bored. And, like my carpet was scratchy.
I just realized we didn't fully introduce ourselves. So I'm Artemis. My pronouns are they, she. And I've been shifting for or I've been on my shifting journey, I should say, for a little over a year, although I can't actually put an exact date on it, like not even within a few months, an exact date on it, because I don't really remember. Also, if anyone's interested, I am a dancer and an artist, and I got my bachelor's in gender and queer studies.
Yes, we love it.
Okay, what about you? Tell us about
Okay,
yourself.
so my name is Hannah. I'm 29 years old. My pronouns are she, her, or whatever you feel like calling me. I'm not gonna care. Um, I have been on my shifting journey since I think August of 2021. That's my rough estimate. It's August or September. I think I may have had my first attempt sometime in September, but I think I may have found out about it like the end of July, beginning of August, because of shift talk, of course.
Yeah, why don't you
I
tell us how you
so
discovered shifting,
yes,
came on your
so
shifting journey?
as so many of you, I found out about shifting on Shift Talk. But the thing is that unlike so many people who got the girl crying about being at Hogwarts for a year or
Or Draco
Draco
pushing people down the
pushing you down the
stairs?
stairs,
I've
um,
still never seen that video.
oh, I saw so many of them and I was like, I really like whatever is happening right now. But no, the way that I found out about shifting on Shift Talk was somebody posting about scripting and something to do
Which we
about,
still haven't defined.
yes. Oh,
We'll
that's
do that
okay.
in a moment.
Yes, and our next episode is actually all going to be about scripting too. So I found out about shifting on Shift Talk because of a video talking about scripting, and I thought I had fallen into a weird part of writers talk on TikTok, in which case I was going to learn how to write scripts, which was so perfect because I had just been thinking about writing trying to do like a TV script or a screenplay or something like that because that seems to fit my
That's
writing style just a
awesome.
little bit better. So I just thought I found it for this really cool
I
little
did that in
niche thing
college.
on TikTok. And then I was like, wait, somebody's talking about scripting things like for Hogwarts. Is this about a fan fiction? And so then I started diving deeper into it, and then I came across the Draco down the somebody's talking about scripting out Draco pushing them down the stairs. And that's
You
how,
did find the Draco
yeah,
pushing
so
people
that
down the
but it was
stairs.
somebody specifically talking about how they had seen a video of somebody talking about Draco pushing them down the stairs. They didn't want that to happen, so they were scripting it out. And then I was like, what is everybody talking? They're talking about like they literally were at Hogwarts. Like, what is happening? And I fell down the rabbit hole of reality shifting and believed it immediately. Not a doubt in my mind. I was like, yeah, no, this is totally something that's possible. I just don't know how I'm going to figure out how to do it. And that's pretty much where we're still at today. I feel like I've been on 3 separate shifting journeys since starting now. And they all happen with a new
Interesting.
DR because I stick with a DR. I'm very consistent.
Oh, yeah.
So like when I first found out about shifting, MCU DR immediately. I was unafraid, unconcerned. I was ready for the realness of it all. I was going to help defeat Ultron, even though he terrifies me. And I was definitely not gonna
That
freak
would be
out
so
watching a
scary.
continent rise into, or a city rise into the air. That's definitely not terrifying. Luckily, my higher self protected me from any of that before I was really. I had mini shifts there, so I knew it was possible, and I got memories from there, which is also something that we'll talk about
Another episode.
in another episode at a later date in a lot more detail. But I knew it was like my life was there, but it just wasn't the right place for me to go at the time. So I was like, well, maybe we'll change it up a bit. And then I started on my intended reality journey. And that's when I realized that my shifting journey really needed to be centered around healing because I have a lot that I need to do in this reality. So the only way that reality shifting is going to sync up well with me is if I integrate it into what I'm currently trying to do now, which is in my healing era. So we picked a DR that seemed like one that would be on the same path of healing that I'm going on now, but it still allow me to go to a new place and see people that I want to see and have the experiences in the life that I want to. So it was kind of like a me and my higher self came to this mutual decision. This was the best reality, which is ironic considering that when I first found out about reality shifting, had a dream that my first shift was to Storybrooke, and I had called my fiance in the dream because he was my fiance at the time, and told him that I was confused because I didn't even like Once Upon a Time. Like I liked it when it came out, but I wasn't a fan.
Oh, how
I
the
had never,
tables have turned.
I had never even rewatched it before, and I'm a chronic rewatcher of TV shows, and I've never once rewatched Once Upon a Time at that time. So I was like, why would I ever shift to Once Upon a Time? The MCU is all I care about. And now
That's so
here we are,
funny. Here we are.
literally wearing a Once Upon a Time the Eras Tour shirt as we speak. Um, on my healing era. Any day now.
It's so funny because we like decided simultaneously but separately that we were shifting to Once Upon a Time.
We
Like
did.
I
It was
like
so perfect.
it was so funny how that happened. It's just like completely like we didn't know.
Yep.
I think we'd like already been in like a little bit of contact by this point, and then we
We
started.
bonded over Once Upon a Time.
Yeah.
You're who helped me pick my backstory because I couldn't pick, like, I was
Oh
like, okay.
yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm
Because I was
finally
like, here's
decided.
all the different possible fairy tales.
Yep, I
Because
was like,
I'm
I'm
such a
finally
fairy
ready
tale
for
nerd.
it. I'm
Dude,
finally ready to start one.
I actually like fairy tales was sort of part of my senior thesis a little bit because I'm so much of a nerd.
I'm so obsessed with that. Oh my
It was
God.
great.
Oh,
Before I did like my big show at that was like my we call it a plan of concentration, not a senior thesis, because my school is like kind of its own thing. But before I did my big show, I was originally gonna do a dance film that was a queer retelling of The Little Mermaid. And I didn't get to finish it because one of my actors uh had to go to Costa Rica before we were able to finish it and was like gonna be there until after I needed to finish it. So I wasn't actually able to finish it, but I have like most of it to the point where I've got like a full rough cut of the whole film with like little black spaces that say insert clip of X here.
oh,
Like
oh my gosh. Ugh,
but
I
yeah,
love
obsessed
it.
with fairy tales. So like intuitively I was like maybe I should, because at this point I was trying to the main place that I've been wanting to shift almost since the beginning. Initially it was Hogwarts because that's what most people were talking about, and that's also been my special interest since I was like 8. And that's still on my list of places to shift to, but pretty quickly when I realized that I could create this like waiting room space to retreat to, that became the main place I wanted to shift to because autism. I was like,
Yep.
I need a safe space. And safe like doesn't mean that I feel like in danger here. It just means that like there's so much that's draining me of spoons. And I just need a place where I'm not gonna
Existing isn't exhausting.
existing isn't exhausting. Exactly. So like that became my main DR, this my base reality because of that. And I'd been trying to shift there for a few months, and then I was thinking about like maybe I should try somewhere else because I've been focusing on this for so long that maybe it's blocking me because I'm hyper focused on it.
Yeah.
And Once Upon a Time, just like basically how this happened was I started like looking at things that I had, like movies or TV shows that I had in my iTunes, that I was like, what could I fall asleep with on in the background that wouldn't be too distracting for me. And
Yeah.
Once Upon a Time showed up, and I was like, oh, maybe this is the right one. And then I heard you start talking about it, and I was like, it's fate. This is the one.
And then we created
Like,
this
that's a sign.
we created this reality together because this
We
isn't just
did.
my Once Upon a Time DR. This is also your Once Upon
Our.
a Time DR. It's our
It's
DR.
our DR. Yeah, that's also like a whole separate episode. Group
Yes.
shifting.
Group
Uh,
shifting are going into detail about our DR, how we decided to like integrate everything. That'll be a whole other episode, I
that's a
think, as
whole other
well.
episode. I discovered shifting sometime between May and September of 2022. It's hard for me to know exactly when I discovered it because and like I didn't mention that like we feel like shifting and manifesting
I
are
know I was gonna
they're either the same thing or they're really closely connected, because I actually discovered shifting. I wasn't even on TikTok. I discovered shifting through YouTube through the manifesting community. I mean, I say community, I wasn't interacting with anyone. I was just watching videos. But I was watching manifestation videos, and the term reality shifting or shifting realities is used in the manifesting community
very
too.
much so.
Because when manifestors talk about when you're manifesting, it's not like you're forcing something to happen. You're picking the reality. It's like, okay, let's say an example is like, I want to get a specific job. I'm not forcing that job to come to me. I am choosing to shift myself into a reality where I get that job. And people already
Exactly.
use this terminology in the manifesting community.
Yeah.
And because I was looking at, I was like, I'm really into manifestation. And so I was like looking up stuff about that. And the term shifting realities and reality shifting was being used there. And then that sort of led me into
Into, yeah.
this version of reality shifting because the terminology is so similar or in some cases the same. And I think I think I can't remember the first videos I saw that was actually reality shifting because I didn't I don't remember where that shift, forgive the pun, happened. It might have been one of Cass's videos, I'm not sure, but the first one that I like remember, well, like when I first saw it, I thought they were just talking about lucid dreaming. Like I thought that reality shifting was lucid dreaming, but you're picking the dream that you have and like you're choosing what happens there. So like I didn't fully realize that it was not lucid dreaming and more real than lucid dreaming and like a very
Yeah.
different experience. And I think the first thing that tipped me off was this person on YouTube named Rochelle, who was talking about shifting to Hogwarts. And she was talking about how Cho Chang is her cousin. And she shifted
That's cute.
there and they like sat in the gallery for a few hours talking. And I was like, that's not how dreams work.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean you sat for a few hours talking? Is like, what are you making this up? That's not, I've had lucid dreams. This isn't how it works. And so I was really confused and I was like kind of skeptical because of that. And so then I started doing more research and that's when I discovered the Get Shifty podcast.
Yeah.
And then I think they had like all but one of the first season episodes out. So I watched all of those and then I went and followed C on Shift Talk. Like I got on TikTok
Because of,
specifically so that I could follow C
that's
um
actually really cute.
and look at their stuff because I wanted to learn more about this because C was the one who convinced me
That it was real.
that it was real.
Yeah.
Because I was like, the way they're talking about this and the way they describe it and the way they explain it, and also the way they describe their own experiences, there's no way they're lying.
Yep.
Like, I'm really good. I'm like a pretty good human lie detector. I can usually tell. Not always, but I'm like, I don't know. I think like something about that autism, like
Yeah.
authenticity detector is pretty good. So I was like, there's no way that this person specifically is lying because of the way they're talking about it.
Yep.
And so I started doing more research and then the first like notation I have in any of my journals about it is I think from like October 5th maybe or October 6th of 2022. And so I think that was my first recorded
We're
like shifting anything.
yeah.
So that's when I count it from. Yeah. So that's me. I feel like we should define scripting and scripts because I think we've mentioned that.
A couple times.
Um,
Yeah, I
so
agree.
yeah, so scripting is it can literally be writing stuff down. It can also just be thinking about things or like I'll often script something by just saying, I am scripting this in my head and then it's done. But
Yep.
basically what scripting is it's a way of specifying where you're going
Yep.
in your mind. So you might say, like, I'm going to Hogwarts, but I'm scripting that I am related to the Weasleys or whoever, right? And that's like a way of specifying where you want to go. Or I'm scripting that Voldemort doesn't exist and the Wizarding War doesn't happen because like
Yeah.
you're trying to avoid trauma.
It
So
just
that's
helps your it
specifying.
yeah, it just helps your brain determine which reality you're going to. Because if there's a
Yeah.
multiverse of infinite possible realities, then scripting just helps define which one you're trying to become aware of.
Dude, I also think there's a multiverse of multiverses. I was like thinking about this because right because like so in this reality when people talk about the multiverse the way like scientists think about the multiverse, it's not the way people in the shifting community generally think about the multiverse.
Yeah.
Because generally it's like every choice you make there's a reality where you made a different choice and so every possible choice that anyone's ever made ever has a potential like whole
Other
branch
reality out there.
whole branch of realities that stemmed from that choice that exist in potential, and we're just in the one for the like the specific choices that have happened, but every other reality exists in potential. But that doesn't necessarily explain like Hogwarts existing.
Yeah.
But I think there is a multiverse of multiverses. This is just like something I've been thinking about as like a possible theory that like, so our multiverse is all the potential realities within this reality.
Yeah.
But then there's also all the potential realities within Hogwarts, or all the potential realities within Once Upon a Time, or whatever, or all the potential realities, on like planet whatever. I don't, like
Yeah.
whatever. So I think there's multiverses within multiverses, if that makes sense. Like if you look at the MCU, the multiverse canonically exists in the MCU,
Yep.
but I think that that's that like that
That's
multiverse of the ends
is
is like a self-contained multiverse. And then there's like the multiverse of like us being able to get to them. This is assuming that the multiverse, because like the multiverse is only one theory.
yeah.
And
I would say there are multiple theories, and I think we have an episode, right? Don't we have an episode
we're
where
gonna
we're
talk about
dedicating
like,
to talk about
are we talking
that?
about like multiverse and consciousness and all those things? We
Do we
might
want to talk about that in this one?
we
I
might
mean, we
not. Well,
can.
we sort of did in our definition.
Yeah.
That like the multiverse theory is basically you're moving your awareness outwards, and the consciousness theory is basically you're moving your awareness inwards. So I think
Yep.
generally the multiverse theory is the idea that like the multiverse is real, and when you're reality shifting, you are actively like physically shift, not physically because obviously like your body doesn't go
But
anywhere.
your
It's just
consciousness physically
it's actually
doing an
really just, I
action.
think it's really even more like just your awareness
Yeah.
to another reality, just like shifting your awareness to a different reality within the multiverse. That's basically the
It's like
multiverse theory.
you're
And then the
just tuning the
consciousness
channel.
theory, yeah, basically. And the consciousness theory, I've heard two versions of the consciousness theory. Version one is that you're creating the reality within your own mind. And version two is that you're manipulating your five senses to create a real experience, sort of similar, like sort of along the same lines as lucid dreaming, but not exactly the same and more real.
Yeah.
And I've heard different versions of the consciousness theory. I think I've also heard the perspectives theory as interchangeably with the consciousness theory. I'm not really sure, but I also don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Um,
I would say
there's a
my
lot of there's a lot of
there's a
um
lot of debate about which theory,
there's a
and I
lot of
think
debate. Yeah.
ultimately what it comes down to is that it doesn't matter which one is right, which one is wrong. It's just picking whatever makes the most sense to your brain. And if being like, none of
Yeah.
those make sense, just call it magic, because magic doesn't have like, I thought about this the other day actually, how I was like, well, in my waiting room, I could just do this because it's magic. And I was like, well, you just apply that to shifting, you know? And I was like, oh, brain, why would you do that to me right now?
Yeah, ultimately I think it
Don't
doesn't
do that to me
matter
right now. It's just whatever
exactly.
makes it make the most sense to you for you to be able to believe that you can do it and then
Yeah.
align and then do it.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah, and because I don't think we have enough information to say
not at all.
definitively one or the other.
And
Like
I'm not a
cannot,
scientist.
or a psychologist, right? We cannot
Yeah.
say definitively, because I think the consciousness theory has like more basis in psychology, right? Because like we don't know what a good percentage of the brain does.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing. Is that it's not like I'm excited to just, I think there's like all kinds of things that the human brain is capable of that like we don't fully know yet.
100%. I've always
Um
believed that.
yeah, me
So,
too. And I think this is one of those things. Um
I
which also it makes
agree.
sense to me why like really spiritual people have already been doing this for like
Yeah.
hundreds of years. People who are like, practice mindfulness or like more in touch or more at peace are like have like more access to those parts of their brain, I
Yep.
believe. I think as we collectively become more self-aware and more mindful and potentially even more spiritual, maybe. That we're sort of getting back in touch with these parts of our brain that are capable of experiencing things that we have like weren't previously able to access.
Yep.
I think. Um, yeah.
I'll say no, I completely agree. I think that I feel like my understanding of the multiverse and the consciousness theory was that they could one could not exist without the other. But
Mm,
my thought process about the consciousness theory was that the consciousness theory is what triggers the multiverse to even be possible, because it's whatever any reality that you can conceive in your brain. If you can think it, it exists. That's what triggers like the multiverse. So like that's what makes that reality become a reality. And that's why there's an infinite amount. That's why you can shift to any reality of your choosing, because if you can think it, that automatically creates the universe, like that reality. Like just thinking it makes it become real. And then it's just becoming aware of it. And so whether or not it's a physical reality that is out there in the deep dark whatever, or it's a multiverse as in it's a consciousness multiverse and you're just traveling to universes that are only accessible through your brain, regardless, like it's real. Time is moving. It's a
it's
different
real. So
it's a
what does
multiverse
it matter?
regardless. Yeah. And like I
Yeah.
really like the imagery from, and I talk about this all the time, but the Loki TV series where like they've got like the Citadel at the end of time and they've got like the sacred timeline. I imagine every different color in the sacred timeline is a different DR, a different reality that you exist in, can become aware of at any moment if you so chose. And like the Citadel at the end of time that just kind of floats on the outside of it is what your waiting room would be, your little pocket dimension. And that's your center of consciousness. And that's why you can choose any reality to go to at any point, is because you just like, I want to go to the orange one over there and just drop in at this particular time in that timeline's history where I exist, and these are all the things that'll happen. And now I'm there and it's great. It's so cool. And now I can go back to my waiting room and I can watch it all on TV. It's great.
Yeah. And I think the consciousness theory gets a lot of hate because I think people have this idea that, especially the version of the consciousness theory where it's like a manipulation of the five senses. I think that
Yeah,
version in particular gets a lot of hate because I think people assume that that makes it less real
but
than
it doesn't.
multiverse, but it doesn't, because it's real for you. If it's real enough that you can heal trauma or experience trauma, then it like how do we even define reality to begin with? I mean, what
Yeah,
evidence is there that what we're experiencing right now is even real? Like,
exactly.
not to get too not to
But
get too
it's true. But like
existential, but
if you're gonna hate on it, that is in theory, you can say that this is all, if it feels just as real as this does, like if me sitting here like punching my hand
then it
feels just
doesn't
as
matter.
real,
It
it
doesn't
doesn't
matter
matter.
if it's all happening in your head or whatever. It doesn't matter because in a way this reality is all happening in our heads anyway. Like I don't and like I think people are like, well, if it's all happening in your head, then that means that the people in it don't really have consciousness because they're a product of your brain. And I'm like, okay, but there's no evidence that anybody else in this reality has consciousness either. Like, and
Yeah.
I am that person too that has definitely had that thought of, does anybody else actually have
Oh,
awareness?
constantly.
Like,
I'm constantly
I'm
like,
that existential.
are my neighbors at my old apartment complex, are they all NPCs? Like, what's happening? Like
And
all
I'm
the
not
time.
saying that's true. Like,
No, I know, not at all, not
don't
at
cancel
all.
me. Don't cancel us.
No.
I'm just saying we can't prove it. And
Yeah.
so, like,
I think that's
it
a
doesn't matter. It
neurodivergent
doesn't
brain
matter. It
thought.
feels real to us, and that's the important thing. It feel like it doesn't matter if other people don't have awareness or not, because we experience this reality as real, and so we treat the people in it as though they also
Are
are
real.
aware. Because again, we don't know for sure if anyone else is real here, but we assume that they are, and so we treat them like they are. And the same is true for any other reality you shift to, whether it's out there or within here. That doesn't mean that it's any less real. And I feel like this is where I want to start reading some quotes
Oh,
that I feel
okay.
like pertain very well to reality shifting, because all of this talk about like but if your brain is creating it, that then it's not real. I'm like, well, I am going to or even if people who believe that it's like advanced lucid dreaming, that still doesn't make it any less real. Because I'm going to read two quotes that pertain to this. One is from Alice Through the Looking Glass, like the live action with Johnny Depp version. And this quote is all over TikTok, but this is where this quote is from. Alice says, "A dream is not reality." And the Mad Hatter says, "Who's to say which is which?" And like, who is to say which is which? When we're dreaming, how do we know that that's not reality and this isn't the dream? We
Yeah.
don't know. And then the other quote is also very like relevant, especially because Harry Potter is so big in the shifting community,
Yep.
at least right now. But this is when Harry and Dumbledore at the very end, and they're at like the King's Cross area. And Harry asks Dumbledore, "Is this real? Or is this just happening inside my head?" And Dumbledore says, "Of course it's happening inside your head, but why on earth should that mean that it's not real?" So like every time, if you're worried about the consciousness theory, I mean, first of all, if you're worried about the consciousness theory, you don't have to believe it. You can
Yeah,
choose to
just
believe the
say
multiverse theory.
it doesn't exist.
Whatever makes the most sense for you, but you don't have to get upset about the consciousness theory,
Yeah.
because think of this quote, like that doesn't mean that it's any less real. And then I have one more quote that actually pertains more to the multiverse theory, or even just to shifting in general, that like I just really want to read because I absolutely love this. And it's from something that's like a little more niche that I love, which is the Discworld series by Terry Pratchett, which I'm totally going to read to you at some point. Like
Yay.
when we're through with Harry Potter, I want to move on to this because this is like such a big thing in my family that my brother and I communicate, like half our communications are quotes from this story. So a character in this story says, "In truth, there are more worlds than stars in the sky. They are everywhere, big and small, as close as your skin. They are everywhere. Some you can see, some you can't. But there are doors. They might be a hill, or a tree, or a stone, or a turn in the road, or they might even be a thought in your head. But they are there all around you."
It's so good and so good.
That's good. I feel like that's a good place to end. So where can the lovely people find you, Hannah?
You can find me on TikTok. It's at haha shifts. I think it's going to show up right here because that's where it's at on Zoom right now. And that's me. I'm on TikTok.
And you can find me on TikTok at Lemurian Links. And I will definitely like insert that somewhere because
I feel it. We will have our TikTok Shift Talk accounts in the description of whatever video that is being posted.
or I'll like have a little pop up on the screen.
Yeah.
Probably. So people can see it.
So this is Hannah's haha shifts.
And I'm Artemis. And we'll see you next time. Hi, everyone. This is Artemis from the future. If you're seeing this on YouTube, then I wanted to let you know that the rest of season 1 is going to be being released on Patreon at the $1 a month tier. Now, eventually, it will be available on YouTube for free. When season 2 is released on Patreon, season 1 will become available on YouTube. However, if you are able to support us, it is incredibly helpful to us. We love making this podcast and we want to continue doing it. However, in order to be able to continue putting the time, energy, and resources into making it, then we really do need to be having some amount of income from it. So if you are able to support us, it would be a huge help in enabling us to continue making the podcast for you. And you would be getting episodes significantly sooner than everybody else. We are just Makeshift Podcast on Patreon, and we will include a link in the description. Thank you so much.